Hello, my lovely listener. I've got a few questions for you. I'm curious if you want to take some time before we start the show to think about them with me. First question. Do you find yourself staring at other photographers' images on Instagram and other places and wonder exactly how they capture such real and natural looking snippets of time? Are you tired of posing people and creating the same old images? Maybe that you've been creating or that you see others doing. Number three, is your biggest hangup that people just won't stop looking at the camera and cheesing at you when you are trying to orchestrate organic and honest expressions? Number four, do you find it difficult to communicate how to be in the moment and instead find yourself telling your clients what to do or having them waiting for you to control their every movement? Or maybe after you've thought about all these things, maybe you're just plain tired of feeling the pressure to have every person in every photo be perfect. If you nodded in agreement to anything that I have said, my friend, I have made you something. It is called Definitely Documentary. If you've been listening to the show for a minute, you know that I'm someone who kind of stands up for what they believe in. And I believe the photography world needs more documentary photographers, particularly in the wedding and family sphere, because documentary is real, honest life as we live it. And we have got to hold fast to these moments in these people as they are. If that rings true for you, keep listening. I want to help you embrace that magic imperfectness that is the essence of what life is. So, I've made a 5 video course. It's do it yourself at your own pace, lifetime access. Definitely Documentary is the definitive guide to documentary photography. This is for people who are just getting into photography. This is for people who have been in it for a bit and they're looking for a shift in their work, like the questions that I asked you at the very beginning. This is for people who are really interested in documentary photography and they don't know quite where to start. These 5 videos and a couple of little bonuses, they will take you from A to Z, teach you everything you need to know about composition, about bending the time-space continuum so that you can be in the right space at the right time, mental mindset for your clients and for yourself, and how to find your own perspective in this wild and crazy saturated world of wedding and family photography. If any of this is interesting to you, and I hope it is, click the link in the show notes. It'll take you to the website that gives you the full details. The videos will be available starting on August 15th. And I've got a little price incentive. If you want to sign up before they're available, you get a little discount. That is on the website. If this sounds like you, then definitely Documentary is, wait for it, it's definitely for you, my friend. It's a mini course that is fun, easy to digest, quick to walk through. I'll take you through every aspect of documentary photography to help you become more knowledgeable, more prepared, and more confident for your next session. Link is in the show notes. And now, on to the show. Friends, very cool guest joining me for a illuminating conversation today. This guy has a solo exhibition at the Martin Parr Foundation. I don't know if you've heard of Martin Parr, but he's kind of a big deal in the photography world. Look him up. But more importantly, look my guest up. He insists he's not a wedding photographer, and yet he's got a book about it. He has his exhibition about it, and he's been doing it for a long time. So today we have Ian Weldon.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I am better,
It's nice to see you up and at 'em.
and I have been. Yeah, yeah. I know it's been 6 weeks
Wow.
now, and I still
Brutal.
feel a little spaced out.
Yeah.
So do excuse me.
Is that
Uh,
is that your first bout of COVID?
As far as I'm aware, yes.
Yeah,
As
crazy.
far as I'm aware. Um,
Yeah.
so what happened is that developed into a serious chest infection as well,
Hmm.
with suspected pneumonia. So I've had a bit of a time over the last few weeks.
No
I'm
kidding.
still not 100%, but I'm okay. Things are getting better, and I can't sit around doing nothing anymore. It drives me insane.
I agree. I agree. I had
Yeah.
it when it like in the first round, like when the world was falling apart,
Right,
in
yeah,
a different way. Um, and like I lost all my senses, like I lost the smell and taste. That was such a trip. Did that
yeah.
happen for you?
No, well, no, I was just bedridden, really. I can't. It was very feverish
Yeah.
and yeah, odd. And
Yeah,
I'm
it's
still. I
intense.
think it's probably the worst, the most ill I've ever been.
Yeah, yeah, me too, for sure. Like my lungs felt like there was glass in them. Like
Yeah, yeah,
so painful, like just like this crushing
yeah.
thoracic feeling
Yes, it
for a
was awful.
while.
But
Yeah,
hopefully, we're back. We're
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 back.
we're
You're
coming
back.
back slowly but surely. Slowly but surely.
Well, I am very glad to hear that because we need you, Ian.
Right. Okay.
Thanks for agreeing to be here.
You're welcome. Thank you for
Yeah.
asking me.
Yeah. So I was wondering, what I do here on the podcast is I like to chat with people about all sorts of things, but mostly they tend to center around our conversations tend to center around like the times in our life when things kind of went sideways or there was like a giant shift that happened in their career or in even in their personal life and how it affected their art, and how that came about in terms of the next like level, or the next chapter or whatever sort of metaphor you want to use there in their careers and in their lives and in their businesses. But let's give the listeners a little bit of background on who Ian is. Do you want to share just
Introduce myself.
a little introduction? Sure.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, I am a photographer.
Mhm.
Well, I don't. I see. This is the thing as well. Am I a photographer? As it like, how do we define ourselves in
Yes.
what it is that we do? And I predominantly photograph weddings, but I
Mhm.
am not a wedding photographer.
Mhm.
And I've been doing that for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Uh, not not necessarily in the same way that I do it now.
Mhm.
When I started 20 years ago, it was more a case of I wanted, because I was so interested in photography history and documentary photography and
Mhm.
um, like the photographers that helped me to understand what photography could be.
Mhm.
Um, I then wanted to maybe in my kind of naive mindset follow out on their path
Yeah.
and do that kind of thing. So we have obviously Walker Evans and Martin Parr and
Yeah.
Cartier Bresson and Helen Levitt, and I mean even stuff like I was also interested in the expressive nature of photography. We look at photographers like Sarah Moon and the way that she photographed fashion, and then Dwayne Michaels with the narratives that he creates and kind of the artistry and what he does. And I just had this I had a need to earn money. I had to earn money
Yeah.
before you go and work on your other projects. So
Yeah.
if a photographer is what I was, then that's how I should be making my money rather than reverting back to what it is that I did before, which was everything, like all kinds of stuff like truck driver and
Yeah.
um, car salesman and every other job you could possibly conceive.
Mhm.
Weddings came along as a way to make money to work on my own long-term projects and my
Yeah.
own work because I was a documentary and fine art photographer. I didn't know what that was. It just sounded cool. And really, weddings themselves were bottom rung photography jobs. That was the bottom tier.
Yeah.
It's what you did when you couldn't do anything else. Oh, so I perceived.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so photography, wedding photography was a way to make money. I quickly came around to the idea, I came around to the understanding that wedding photography doesn't have to be what the industry says wedding photography is.
Right.
Uh, Wedding photography can just be photography. oh, wedding photography can be another form of self-expression. Wedding photography could be another long-term documentary project.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so yeah, and over the last 20 years, obviously that the more that you understand, the more that you learn, the more that you study, not just your own, not just other people's ideas, but your own photographs and your own understanding of what a good photograph is, then things evolve. And I am probably so far removed from when I first started that like I couldn't really so many different things have happened or so many small nuances of change that it would be impossible to explain how or even why that happened now.
Mm. Well, that's what we might try to do here today, Ian.
Oh, well, there you go.
Do you want to because this is more and more people are saying this. I'm a photographer at a wedding. I'm not a wedding photographer. I'm a photographer. Do you want to give us your impression of that, like what that means to you?
I think that a lot of people who are saying that are still wedding photographers.
Okay.
They still subscribe to the idea of what wedding photography should be.
Yeah.
They are still fundamentally running a wedding photography business.
Yeah.
So wedding photography itself, I mean, undeniably it's commercial photography.
Mm-hmm.
And wedding photographers, as much as they consider themselves storytellers and artists and whatever they want to put in front of wedding photographer, documentary wedding photographer, fine art wedding photographer,
Mm-hmm.
and every other subgenre of what wedding photographer can be, fundamentally they're still running a business and they're subscribing to a part of the industry that makes that kind of work. And they're making
Mm-hmm.
that work for clients more than anything else.
Yeah.
I think as far as a photographer at a wedding is somebody, I don't look at the wedding as a wedding photographer. I look at it, I mean, I don't even look at it as a photographer. What I'm doing is I am only photographing my response to the subject. The wedding isn't the subject for me. It's my response to the subject that is the more important thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so a photographer at a wedding I'm not running a wedding photography business. I never have been.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it was just to make some money to work on longer term project. Turns out that it became the project,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I never really tried to. I never made a plan. It wasn't a plan. It wasn't like this is what I'm going to do and this is how I'm going to shoot weddings. That was a natural progression in how I think a wedding should be photographed.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't read the market or try and I didn't have this great marketing plan and I didn't take inspiration from the industry itself. What I did was I found something in my own photographs that I wanted to pursue.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we'll probably get onto more of that later on if I am correct in how you are going to
Orchestrate
stick
that.
this conversation. But it was about, yeah, so I think there was a very, very small percentage of people who are photographing weddings who are not commercial photographers, who
Okay.
are genuine artists.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying one is better than the other,
Mm-hmm.
but I think we have to try and stop. I mean, I don't know what to say. Can you be a storyteller when the story's already there?
Yeah.
Or
It's
is
just
your
it's just not that interesting.
interpretation, or is it the industry's interpretation? What people are doing, they're going with the preconceived
Yeah.
idea of what it is that wedding is going to look like. And that is based on the client that they want. That is based on their kind of marketing, their forward-facing business. So they're shooting stuff that's going to get them more work. That's what they're
Yeah.
doing.
I
I'm
love this
really
question.
photographing for me
Yeah.
and what the client is doing. They're hiring me based on what it is that I do for them. What like they're interested in photography. They're interested
Mm-hmm.
in the documentation of the day, and they're not really interested in the pomp and ceremony. And I think
Mm-hmm.
there's a bit of a difference there as well.
Yeah, I do agree. One time I was doing an assignment and the person I was talking with asked me, he's like, "So do you come in here like with an idea of what you want to say and how this should look?" And it kind of set me on my heels a little bit because it made me question like what preconceived notions I have going into a story,
Right.
right? And that inevitably will impact how you shoot it. And it's something that I definitely struggle with when I'm shooting weddings is am I shooting this because of how I want to shoot it, or am I shooting this because of like the inborn social bias of being part of this culture in how we look at weddings? So is that something that ever affected you, like going into, because people are hiring you, right?
Yes, yes.
So so like how do
Of
you
course. But it's people who aren't really interested in the whole business of weddings and wedding photography. It's people who are getting married for, dare I say, different reasons.
okay.
Um, not forced marriage, or like people who are getting married. They're not. A lot of my clients are not really interested in the big fairy tale wedding day.
Yeah.
They're getting married and they're getting their friends together, and
Yeah.
they don't want that. They don't want a document of that to look back on that looks the same as everything else that they found on the internet.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know, and I say this to all of my clients as well, that I'm not really, although that I am photographing for them because they're hiring me to go and do the job.
Yeah.
I'm more photographing for me, and I'm photographing for this long-term project,
Yeah.
and they are part of that, and they're happy and willing to be part of that. And it's very rare. I mean, if people have got a shot list and they want specific things, then I'm not really the photographer for them.
Yeah.
You know, it's very rare that we get to a point of booking and then I get a list of shots that need taking, and
Yeah.
it's more just turn up and do your thing.
Yeah.
And as I said earlier, it's like I'm photographing my response to the wedding, and going back to what I mentioned about storytelling, it's like I don't really think that I have not necessarily the right, but the the skills, the understanding, the anything that would to shoot anybody, to tell anybody else's story apart from my own.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm doing. It's my story, it's my response. But in doing so, then I have my own perspective and my own idea of what weddings should be. And if we go with a preconceived idea, a preconceived notion, and an idea of the pictures that we want to make, we're only going to make the pictures that we wanted to make.
Yeah.
You know, we kind of have to go, like, as you were saying before, it's like you have this idea and there's this kind of struggle between, am I doing this for me? Is it expectation? Is it, and for me, it's got nothing to do with the industry and more about, it's about photography, really.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the thing, that's the thing that I'm interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And I came to understand that photography could be as unexpressive an art form as any other art form. And this is why I'm it gets to the point where it's like, am I even a photographer? Okay, I use a photographer, a camera, but I'm not interested in cameras. I don't care about cameras. I don't care about the industry. I don't care about the pomp and ceremony. I don't care about megapixels and lenses
Mm-hmm.
and software and all. I have the tools. I know how to use the tools that I have,
Mm-hmm.
but what I'm primarily concerned about is the idea. And in
Mm-hmm.
doing that, then that is more how an artist would think than a commercial photographer would think. But again, I'm not saying that one is worse or different than the other. They all have needs. Um, there is an industry for a reason,
Mm-hmm.
and I just find that stuff exhausting.
Yeah.
Like the whole
Which
jumping
part?
through
Which
hoops
part is
and
exhausting?
things changing every season, every year. There's a new trend. There's a new thing. There's a
Yeah.
new camera. There's a new this. There's a new that. How do we ever understand what it is that we're supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
You know, but people buy into that, and it's a commercial gig, and people are very successful. I probably would be way more financially successful if I was a wedding photographer than what I do now. But I would never have been to the places that I've been or been hired for the gigs that I've done, and like seen the things that I've seen and had the fun that I've had if I was just a wedding photographer shooting weddings for people every weekend.
Mm-hmm.
It's a completely different thing for me, and it's kind of hard to talk about how what I do is different and my mindset is different to the wedding photography industry without sounding like I'm poo-pooing the wedding industry a little
Yeah.
bit. But I'm not. I'm
Yeah.
like, it is what it is. And I can't, I'm not in this to change anything. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just doing my own thing.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. It's hard to talk about these things, and then people are like, well, because we tend to be so black and white about like, well, this is bad then, or this is how we should do it, or like it's not. It's
Yeah,
just different. It's just
yeah,
different.
absolutely.
It's just a different way to do it. Um, how do you ever like? It's one thing to have that relationship with your clients, because they know you and they know your work and they know why they hired you. How do you manage guests at a wedding? Do you ever have like misunderstandings with them about how and why you're there and what they expect
In
from you?
in what way? In what way?
Because sometimes guests will have expectations of as to what you should be photographing, and then there's like your clients hire you for a reason, but sometimes even like parents will be like, hey, do you want to shoot this, or can you come do this, like
Yeah.
that sort of aspect, that direction from the
Yeah, I
non-clients.
mean, it's odd when you have staff at the venue saying, "Oh, come here, photograph this. I would have liked this at my wedding." It's just like,
Yeah.
okay, you go along, you take the picture, and you just walk off. And there are parents do get involved. Like they might couples generally want a couple of group shots.
Yeah.
Um, and then parents would get involved, and then aunties and uncles get involved, and then they're dragging every person from every corner of the venue. And it's just like, do you know what? We need to stop this. And I
Yeah.
tell the bride and group, they know up front the group shots that they want. And if it gets out of hand, they do tell people to just stop it.
Yeah.
But if somebody grabs me and said, "Can we get a picture together? Can we do this? Can we have a picture of this?" Like I'm there all day. Of course I can. Of course I
Yeah.
can make the picture.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just say, "Yeah, I'll get onto it in a minute,"
Mm.
if it's something silly. Uh, but yeah, I mean, a lot of the time, like people will ask me like what my other job is or how do I know the couple because I
Mhm.
just shoot. I don't even know whether it's. I haven't got a close hand. It's not on my desk. Like a Fuji X100 is the camera that I use for 99% of everything that I shoot.
Yeah.
So it looks like a point and shoot.
Hmm.
And when you're flown over to San Francisco to go and shoot a wedding, like a whole week long wedding, and all you're doing is walking around with a little point and shoot camera, people tend to get a little bit suspicious. Not the couple or not the people who are like close family, but it's just like, what are you doing and why are you here? Why? And there's always somebody with more expensive gear
I
who will stand
know.
beside you and fire off like 50, a burst of 50 shots. And it's just like, okay, no problem. You just get up and go somewhere else. But I think most people know, and a lot of the weddings that I shoot now, they're not like these 500 people wedding, these 600 people wedding. Like there's 120 are like the biggest ones that I've been doing recently, and they all tend to be quite close knit family. So if they're kind of hiring me and flying me halfway across the world to shoot a wedding, people know who I am and they know why I'm there, and they just leave me to it most of the
Hmm.
time.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, nothing really. I see a lot of again with wedding photographers. There's this whole thing like now that I've started for other reasons being part of the wedding photography industry, I see how bad it can get with photographers complaining about this kind of thing. It's like, oh, I go to a wedding. How dare somebody ask me to do this? And how dare somebody ask me to do that? It's like, well,
Hmm.
who do you think you are?
Yeah.
You know? Or Uncle Bob's there with a camera. It's like, if you're in the same place as Uncle Bob, then you're in the wrong place. Like, and what's happened is this stuff, these are perceived problems because the photographer isn't getting that shot that they want
Hmm.
because they know think about the shot that they want to then promote themselves, and it goes back to the commercial photography thing, and they get
Yeah.
angry about all kinds of nonsense that just let it go, just go and photograph, and I think relinquishing control is a big thing as well. You have to just go with it, and
Yeah.
the process that I think that is just organically developed really is the fact that I just have to give myself to the situation and be free in the situation and not really think too much about what it is that I'm getting and what I'm not getting.
Hmm.
And it's it can be quite scary at first when you're looking at 2,000 pictures and all you're seeing are the bad ones.
Yeah.
And after a couple of weeks, you're just like, it didn't work, it didn't work, it didn't work. But as a sculptor, once you start taking away all the parts that don't matter, and all the parts that didn't work, then you're left with this thing. And I've trusted in that process for over 10 years now, and it always works out.
Yeah.
You know?
Do you, the um, oh, I just lost my brain for a second. It's gone. Um, when you are when you settled on the Fuji, had you tried other cameras that like interrupted your process in terms of like bigger cameras or more intrusive cameras or whatever,
Yeah.
that like what part does that size and like almost like inobtrusiveness, how does that play into your process?
Um, I think that the more that I was becoming responsive to the day itself, I found that because I started when you start, you have the Canon 5Ds and you have the 2470 and you have the 7200 and like you have a 50 and a 35 and an 85 because that's
Yeah.
what people tell you that you need to buy. Well, you need to get this, and eventually it just got to a point where I was shooting mostly, even when I had a zoom lens on the camera, I was shooting at 50 millimeter
Mhm.
or a little wider, 35 maybe, and the cameras just became heavy and. With the images that I thought I was making, or I thought I was trying to make, every now and again a picture would come up in the edit and it'd be like, right, this is the kind of photography. This is the thing that I really connect with, and this is the thing that I wanted to do. And I
Mhm.
found that there's so many pictures under, after understanding that and under what it is that you want to do, because like we don't know what we're doing, and then all of a sudden
Yeah.
you go,
Yeah.
eureka. I
Yeah.
realized that there were so many potentially good photographs that were made bad by the thing that was getting in the way, and that was the camera,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
was the subject's response to the camera,
Yeah.
my response to the camera, it's like those old cameras with mirrors in, with the prisms in, and the racket that they make, and the kind of, do you know, in quiet moments, and it just got to a point where it's just like I need something that doesn't make as much racket. And obviously I can't remember who made them, but they had dampers in them as well, and it was just, at least it wasn't like a old film camera with a winder on, so it wasn't like
Yeah.
clack. Yes, I do. Like, but
Yes, I'm here.
it was becoming I was becoming aware of it, and then I think Fuji had just released the X Pro One, and I got my hands on one of those, and I was trying to use that camera. It was such a difficult thing to use as well. It was so unresponsive and just terrible at everything, so slow. But that camera helped me to slow down as well and
Right.
think about where it is that I need to be and where I was, and allowed me to kind of absorb the day rather than just big camera, big lens, zoom in, zoom out, not knowing where. Like with a zoom lens now, I never know where I have to be and where I need to
Yeah.
be. It's so confusing.
Yeah.
But it was, yeah, so you're zooming in, zooming out, bang, 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 you can take loads of pictures. And then when you have to slow down and you have to pre-focus because the camera's so terrible at like tracking focus, and it really made me kind of, yeah, it that camera really changed my mindset around what it is that I was doing. And the images that I was getting from that camera made me realize that the other one was getting in the way. And
Right.
I think that I tried about three, maybe four weddings, and I always, in difficult situations, went back for the Canon camera. And I remember there was one wedding, and I got all the way through to the evening, and the dance floor was happening, and I was just like, I went into the bag to get the Canon camera, and I was like, no, just leave it, stick with the Fuji camera, stick with it, and that was it. I never touched the Canon cameras again.
Ah, it broke your
And
brain.
yeah, and then the X Pro 2 came along, which just changed everything again. I mean, that's I still use. Oh no, I don't use the X Pro 2 anymore. I've actually, because I shoot a little bit of video things now and again, I traded that and got an XT camera that has better video capabilities. But I still, everything that I shoot photographs, whether it's commercial work, whether it's weddings, my own personal projects, that's all shot on the Fuji X100. The X100 4 or 5. The first one that had the flip out screen, whichever one that
Mm.
is. That's how much I care.
Agreed. um the the tool, like knowing how to use the tool is way more important than having the best tool and not knowing how to
Yeah, of
how
course.
to use it.
Of course.
When you had that eureka moment, like that that in and of itself, like being able to recognize when that is the thing that we want to make, like when that, like that's your voice or perspective, whatever. um how did how long, or like what was, looking back, what were the steps that finally got you to a point where you're like, this is what I'm trying to make, like, because it's often something that we see in hindsight, but it's not something that we know that we're walking towards. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Um, I don't know. I think I just started to become aware of my own personality in the photographs.
Okay.
And I started to become aware of things that have influenced me or had influenced me. I mean, I'm hugely influenced by like abstract art and the Bauhaus and like people of Vasily Kandinsky and um ideas, especially like Marcel Duchamp and these kind of once I started seeing that those influences were filtering into the work itself, and then obviously I don't really take things that seriously. I take photography seriously, you
Yeah.
know, but well, I take the pictures seriously, but I'm like I kind of find that I'm just eternally like just messing around and having a laugh and carrying on and just joking around with stuff, and then that started to get into the pictures as well. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I think I just started to notice that the images were becoming representative of who I am, and that was
Yeah.
because I was just responding to the situation than going in with a preconceived idea of what I thought it should look like. And I don't read for 90% of the time. I don't know what I'm getting when I'm shooting.
Yeah.
It's and although it's important to understand the tools, the camera, like the amount of comments and the threads and things that I see about people saying, "Oh, well, this happened when I was shooting this. Does anybody know what's wrong?" Like, learn how to use your camera. There was a comment about somebody who was a, a gig photographer photographing a band, and they said that they realized that once they got home, that the mic in the corner of the frame was the only thing in focus in most of the pictures. It's just like, well, your focus mode's wrong. You're using the wrong focus. Like, learn how to use your camera. You know, we have to know. I mean, to be fair, now I shoot pretty much everything in what do you call it? Shutter priority
Yeah.
with auto ISO.
Yeah.
It works for me. But if that didn't work, or I had an X100 where the exposure compensation dial fell off, it's like, okay, well, now I have to shoot it manually. But I know how to do that, and I can do that without really thinking about it. And that an artist fundamentally like needs to know how to use the tools.
Yeah.
But then for me, I find it's become more important to understand what a good photograph is rather
Mm.
than how to make a good photograph.
Ooh, tell us more. What do you mean by that?
Um, because we can all go out and go, okay, well, I'm going to do this, or this has to be like that, or that lighting has to be like that, or this light's here, this has to be, there's the frame line, or this. Like doing that and setting that up seems the opposite of what I should be doing.
Yeah.
In my me just being present and responding without thinking about it too much, I have to then understand what a good photograph is, and that's very personal to me. What a good
Yeah.
photograph is to me is a different to what a good photograph is to you, unless we all start reading from this rule book that was never written that everybody seems to preach from. It's like, well, this has
Yeah.
to be like that photograph, or that has to be like that, and that's a good photograph, and this is what makes a good photograph. And the things that make a good photograph to me are based on all of the things that have kind of influenced me. And that's not just visually, that's also ideologically as well and philosophically.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And that takes a certain amount of like self-awareness to know
Yeah.
yourself, to
Yeah,
be
of
able to
course.
do that. I don't know
Yeah,
if
of course.
people necessarily have that self-awareness.
Mm. No, they don't. But this is one of the things that you talked about, like the tilt and shift. It was um although there have been some changes in who I was earlier on in my life, it was photography that helped me to see the world around me. And in doing so, it helped me to understand myself. And it helped me
Hmm.
to realize that we're all idiots and nobody has a clue what we're doing. Yeah. It's
Totally
like,
agree.
yeah, we're like, and that sort of freed me up to just be me and
Hmm.
understand, like, and take control of my own decisions and my own thoughts and my own understanding of the world around me, rather than just I've always been an inquisitive individual.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even from school, it was just I must have been so frustrating the fact that it was just like, well, why do I have to do this? Why should I do that? Why, like, you know, that doesn't make any sense. Explain it to me more. And when it makes sense to me, then, and that's kind of yeah. So and that prodding and poking of life and seeing people for what they really are and who they really are,
Yeah.
yeah, helped me to understand me and help me to realize, as I say, we're all mad. We're all like yeah, nobody knows what's going on. But that's a
Nobody.
freeing thing.
It is totally freeing. And
Yeah,
I think people think that there's freedom in being told what to do, and being told like, this is right, this is wrong, this is good,
yeah.
this is bad. Um, but
Probably more of a
the opposite
comfort
is true.
than a freedom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It
Yes.
takes the
You're
pressure off.
really
You
right.
don't have to make any decisions
You
for
don't have
yourself.
to think about it.
Yeah. And the thing is, I've mostly come to my own conclusions about things,
Yeah.
so I can stand by that conviction.
Do you want
I haven't
to?
just taken it on board without exploring it or understanding what it means to me and whether it should be right or whether it should be wrong.
Yeah. So what is it about photography or the medium that that enabled you to do that? What do you think it was?
I think it was just like the exploration really, and that's as I said before, that being able to in shooting the way that I do, it really exposes life and
Yeah.
people, and you can't really hide from it.
Yeah.
Um, and I found that when you catch people unguarded, you really get to see who they are. But that's a difficult thing to do.
It is
Um,
very difficult.
and maybe, well, not maybe, another reason for the smaller cameras and the less intrusive nature of what it is that I do, because even I think James Nantria said, like, even in a war, that somebody notices the camera, they act up for the camera. No matter how insignificant it might be, they will act up for the camera in some way. And
Yeah.
that's even in war situations. So, like
Yeah.
wedding situations where everybody wants to look their best and look amazing, then it's kind of you have to be able to go unnoticed. But yeah, and photography, not just for weddings, but the personal projects, it's a passport into other worlds that I would never normally get to see or kind of understand, because I can't just turn up and I don't know, go to a working men's club in Northern England and go, can I just come in and just sit and look at everybody and watch what's going on? Like,
Totally.
you can't really do that. But if you turn up with a camera and
People get
explain who
it.
it is you are and what it is that you're doing, or what it is that you're trying to do,
Yeah.
um, and that you're there to amplify the voice of the kind of community that's built into those working men's clubs, and you can talk to people and you have a pure intent, then you can go and find out about people. You can go and study life. It's somewhat
Hmm.
anthropological,
Yeah.
um, with yeah, it's kind of study of people. But I mean, photography itself is not like it's a peculiar thing, unlike I would say any other art form, because we can very quickly become competent with a camera. We can't
Yeah.
very quickly become competent with a guitar or a
Airbrush.
piano
Yeah.
or a paintbrush, or
Yeah.
that stuff takes time, and that takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of years as well.
Hmm.
Repetitive work to actually find out what it is that you want to do. And I think with the problem with photography, is the fact that we have to reverse engineer all that. Once we
Yeah.
can think we can take a good picture, we then have to spend years undoing all that and
Yeah.
studying. But people get to a point that take a good, what is perceived as a good photograph. So it's in focus. It falls into some arbitrary composition.
Expectation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's it. And they don't really progress.
Yeah.
But then because they've been doing the same thing for 5 years, profess to know about photography and know, and then tell people what is right and what is wrong.
Yeah.
And for me, it's not about photography. It's more about like artistic expression,
Hmm.
and that takes a long time. And if you get a group of accomplished musicians together, they have common ground. They have years and years and years and years of practice under the belt. They understand how hard it is to become proficient at what it is that they're doing. If
Hmm.
you get a group of painters together, accomplished painters, they will know about art history. They'll know what came before. They'll know about the techniques. They know who the masters are. They know what's going on. And they have an idea of an understanding of the philosophy of what it takes to be an artist.
Hmm.
And you can say that pretty much with any other art form. You get a group of photographers together. You've got Grandad next door. You've got Jim who works in a factory,
Yeah.
who've all had very different lives.
Yeah.
You know, you've got somebody who has an ID. You've got a young kid out of college. You've got, I don't know, a pilot, a doctor, whatever.
Yeah.
And this is how this is why it becomes so difficult to take any information from the internet,
Yeah.
because most people don't have that understanding and that depth of understanding and knowledge of its history
Yeah.
and the philosophy surrounding it to be able to, I don't know, not confidently. I think it's more to give any real worthwhile comment or any real worthwhile, I don't know, critique, feedback, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And anybody can do it. Anybody, like, and I mean, even like dogs can do it. I've seen, like, stick a camera on a dog. There you go. There's a unique perspective. It's just a dog running around with a camera on top of it. It's like, but this is, I think the thing that makes it so difficult is it's so easy to do. That
Yeah.
sums up what it is that I'm trying to say, really.
It's so easy to do, and it's so accessible, and it's so like there's no barrier to entry.
No, at all. I mean, that's not a bad thing.
No.
Yeah, that's just how it is. That's just fact.
Hmm.
It's not a advantage or well, it's a disadvantage, I think. But I think people can be fooled into considering themselves artists or whatever they want, documentarians or
Hmm.
whatever. And people have to label things. I get it. And the industry tells people that they have to label things and you have to be this kind of thing or you have to be that kind of thing. I've just never been too concerned about what anybody else. I'm not never. Obviously, I have been concerned about what people think and how it should be done until I realised that nothing really matters. And as long as you're not hurting anybody, then do whatever you want. Um, yeah. But yeah, I mean, there are so many different levels and nuances, and as you said, it's not black and white. There are so infinite shades of grey.
Yeah.
But people seem
Yeah.
to see it as black and white. People seem to see it as like this is how it has to be done, or that's not how it should be done. And we can do whatever we want.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to sell stuff that's gray.
Absolutely, it is. And absolutely, and this is the thing. This is the conversations that I have with wedding photographers. I always find that they are asking me questions based on running a wedding photography business. How do you get the
Yeah.
clients that you get? What's your marketing plan? What's this like?
Hmm.
How do you go about doing this? How do you? It's like, no, well, I just went and did it, and I did it
Yeah.
in the way that I felt it should be done for my own. Like, I've had plenty of jobs in my life. I didn't want another job again. I wanted to
Hmm.
be free to kind of roam the planet and do what I wanted. Fortunately, it took a long time. It took like I was shooting for 10 years and working other jobs at the same time before anything really took there was any traction, before anything happened.
Yeah.
And especially when like wedding photographers will ask me like, how do I get the clients that you get? It's like, well, you're going to have to lose all of your followers on Instagram and you're probably going to have to go and get a job.
Yeah.
And when you're 10 years into a business that's putting a roof over your head and supporting your family, it's hard to change what it is that you're doing.
Hmm. Hmm.
And all I think commercial photography, especially in that arena, they just there's not a great deal of progression. Obviously, the more that you do it, the better your skills become as far as making a perceived good photograph, but they just sidestep into something else. Sidestep into another idea. Like, oh, it's flash this year, or it's documentary style this year, or it's fashion this year, or it's this year. They just sidestep into those different
Yeah.
things rather than. I mean, I've had my ups and downs, but uh, luckily the ups have afforded me the opportunity to cope with the downs
Hmm.
uh, financially.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, there's that safety in doing what everybody else is doing, right? That safety and that comfort
Yeah,
that we just talked about. But I am hopeful that there is a shift in photography in general, or like in us as creatives, because yeah, there's definitely people who pick up cameras and do it just because somehow they were able to do it, and they're filling those notions of what looks good or is pretty or
yeah, yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but there is like a thirst for genuine reality. I think that I've been doing this for 15 years and I've never seen this before, like where people are actually interested in things not necessarily being pretty or
Yeah.
necessarily looking a certain way. And so I think we're kind of at this like precipice of some a larger portion of wedding photographers or commercial photographers being able to feel comfortable calling themselves artists, and like because we have to start doing it because everybody's doing the freaking same thing. We're all following, we're like, and people are tired of it, and that comfort is getting strangling. And maybe if I allowed myself that grace and that freedom to like figure out what my voice is and to actually go into a session and shoot for myself,
Yeah,
what a gift that is to your clients and to your own
absolutely.
like
Absolutely.
satisfaction, right? Because
Yeah.
if you're able to do like that, that's the crux where everybody, that's why they're asking these questions. They're like, how do you do that? But they're not willing to let go of,
Yeah.
or not willing to accept that what how they see the world is actually pretty freaking cool. And like if you just listen to yourself and like study things so that you can get a sense of what it is makes you tick,
Yes.
then
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
be able to
Yeah.
find that art, right?
Yeah. But I mean, in order to do that, then if it's photography is the medium that you've chosen, then I believe that we must have some interest in photography history.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
where did it come from? Why did it? Why was it created? What was the need
Mm-hmm.
commercially and artistically? And then how it's being used commercially and artistically. And I learn more about photography than by, I suppose, studying the philosophy of the photographer rather than the study of their pictures. It's like why are they making the pictures? What are they doing it for?
Yeah.
And I would think the why for most, I'm only saying most wedding photographers, is to make money.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the why,
Yeah,
you
for sure.
know. And if you feel comfortable calling yourself, I don't know, a documentarian or artist or whatever, knowing fine well that your only reason for doing it is making money, and you're a very good business person
Yeah.
because the successful or perceived success, as in wedding photographers who make a lot of money, and a lot of wedding photographers make a lot of money, they are very good business people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it has very little to do with, okay, they are competent with a camera and they can keep up with the current trends,
Mm-hmm.
and they can market themselves, and they are very good business people.
Can't you be
And
both?
um yes, you can.
Mm-hmm.
Some of my favorite photographers are very much both.
Mm-hmm.
uh Martin Parr
Mm-hmm.
is an artist who has been made himself very successful in the
Mm-hmm.
commercial field, you know, so you can do it.
Yeah.
Most people, again, I don't want to, I'm not knocking wedding photography for what it is, but that, I think that's a kind of a different thing. I think people get run away with the hysteria of it all. It's just like, I've got a camera, I'm an artist, I'm a documentarian, ah! And it's just like, no, you're not.
Bam.
You're not. You're just running a wedding photography business, and just like if you are, but I think a lot of the time that idea is for, it's more for the client. It's more telling the client that, oh, I'm an artist, oh, I'm this, or whatever the
Yeah.
next trend is in wedding photography, and this is what I am. Like I saw there was a photographer who'd um called themselves a wedding documentarian photojournalist.
Okay.
just
all
like I
the
think
words.
you're just throwing all the words at it. It's like, and then documentarian, photojournalist, wedding photographer, artist, like all of everything that comes with it. And then you go to the website or Instagram profile, and it's just
Mhm.
couple shots and backlit and whatever they call it, light and airy and group shots and like detail shots, and it's just like, well, it doesn't make any
Mhm.
sense.
Well, we
So
can start using each other's words, right? Like
yeah,
again with trends, right? Like documentary is a big trend right now, and
yeah,
people are talking about it, and so they're throwing it into their website copy and they're, but is that what you're actually doing? Maybe they are, and maybe it's they have found like, oh yeah, this is the word that describes me. Thank
yeah, yeah,
yeah, right on. And then and maybe those are more like people who think about it more from an artist perspective or an artistry perspective. And then there's people who are like, hey, that's a really good buzzword. I'm going to hashtag this and see
yes,
what
yeah, yeah, yeah,
happens.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah. So how do we? I mean, the only way we can uh distinguish what is by looking at the work, and
yeah. Yeah.
that's the people should lead with their work, I think. Like,
Yeah.
you know, and we are all incredibly different, and we can put 10 photographers in front of the same thing, and we would all make different pictures of that same thing. And I
Yeah.
think that as far as the wedding industry is concerned, wouldn't it be nice that everybody who was good at what they were doing would just view it from their own perspective and
Ugh,
put it the way
totally
that
agree.
they want to? So,
Yeah. It would be so refreshing. Like if we could all just like accept, like,
yeah.
this is how I shoot this.
But
I
then would
don't
there be
need
too
to
much to
make
choose from as far as the client is concerned? There's like a
like, I don't
million
need to make
different
my
ways
work
to
look
do
like
it.
yours, like there's so much yeah, like comparison syndrome and whatever else, like if and that business side of it, right? Like you see somebody doing quote unquote, or you think is doing well, we don't necessarily know that people are actually doing well, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that's another like layer of that. But you see someone's work that you think you like, and then you start trying to make work like them,
Right.
you you are totally doing yourself an absolute disservice, like, because you're not, you have a perspective, you
Yeah.
absolutely have a perspective, and that's, this is a process of you figuring it
But
out.
that's how we learn. That's how we learn. We learn through imitation,
Yeah.
but then we have to take it on board ourselves and add our own
Yes.
ideas to that, our
Yeah,
own
and I think
understanding.
that step is often
That's
missed,
this,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
But what a lot of people will do is they'll just copy until something else changes, and then they copy, and then they copy, and they never. But it's all that coming back to understanding yourself a bit more,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people don't really have that self awareness,
Yeah.
so they can't. Yeah,
Is there a way to
yeah,
build that?
yes, we can talk. We can talk about that, but you know,
Let's talk about that.
about the lack of self awareness within the human race.
Well, is there a way to build that, do you
What
think?
is there a way to build self awareness?
Yeah. Like, how would you do that?
Oh God, read a book, man. Like, go out and see the world, travel a bit. You know,
Yeah.
get off
Get
social media,
uncomfortable.
get off Instagram, get away from, do things
Yeah.
that push you outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't like heights, go and do some skydiving. If you don't like water, go to do some whitewater rafting. You know,
Totally.
get out, go and walk in the mountains, do it in the chucking down rain, do it in the snow, go and get some ice picks and climb a, not a mountain. Do you know, it's like just get out there and do things. Ride a motorcycle fast,
Yeah.
that'll like that'll let you know who you are quickly.
Yeah. I totally
Um,
agree.
but these are the things, but human beings are soft and squidgy in the body
Mhm.
and in the brain. And society has allowed that to happen, I think. I'm
Mhm.
not saying I am not in some ways like that. Like we all like our creature comforts.
Mhm.
But I also do things that I don't know, they get the blood racing a bit, get out there and do things that and yeah, I think things like social media and general society and society expectations and perceived societal rules about what is right and what is wrong and who we are and what we should do. I've never been interested in all that kind of nonsense. It's kind of it's for the masses. It's the middle of the road. And all we can ever do in that arena is be a better marketer or be more persistent. Or if we step outside of that, we can be who we want to be. And but
Mhm.
it's like that, but that's not an easy path to take.
It isn't.
And
It
it's
really
not
isn't.
just not an easy path to take, it's an easy path to continue on.
Yeah.
Because even after 20 years of photographing weddings, I still kind of, there's somewhere in my brain, it's going, oh, maybe I should just try and do it a bit like this or a bit like that. Or,
Yeah.
and for somebody who hasn't got the conviction in their work and an understanding of what it is that they're doing, then they will fall foul of that over and over again,
Hmm.
you know? And but I think that's just the nature of the industry. It's a nature of humanity. It's a nature of people, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
That it's easier to fall in line than to kind of start prodding and figuring out why and doing things. And if you enjoy what it is that you're doing, and you can keep a roof over your head, and you can go on holiday now and again, and you can,
Mhm.
and live in society and do that, then what's wrong with that? But to me, that's just like having another job.
Yeah.
Uh, that's something that I didn't want again. I had plenty
Mhm.
of them. I was nearly 30 years old when I came to photography.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too.
Already had a few jobs and had a bit of a life. But as I was saying earlier on, it was the ideas of photography and the study of photography that helped me understand who I was. And everything changed. The way that I see the world now is completely different to how it was before.
Do
And
you want to share
really,
a little bit more about that? Like what it,
well, yeah, I mean, they're all of these, well, as I was talking, these societal rules and expectations, it became apparent that there are no rules, and that all that didn't matter.
hmm
You know? And there was a time that I would go to work and come home and sit and watch the TV and get up and go to work the next day. I feel like I wasted 10 years of my life.
Yeah.
It's like, what is all that about? And conversations that I had in my 20s were about what was on the television, and like work the next day or what happened at work, and like how like people are just living in this weird, I felt that people, well, they are just this weird kind of bubble of just like, I don't know, it's a bit like static on the TV or the
hmm
radio, and it's just in there and there's no getting out of it. And that's when I think back to it, that's how it feels. And now I feel like that I'm stood on the outside of that and I can see it, but I don't really have any part of it anymore. Like
hmm
it's all nonsense, all like politics and governments and the news and all of everything that I I am a much happier individual. The fact that I don't have anything to do with that anymore,
Yeah. And
and
yet you can observe it with your camera.
I can observe it with my camera. The aspects that I want to.
Yeah. Do you, so what was it about like the philosophy of photography or what photographers were presenting to you that broke that out for you? Like,
I mean, if we look at it, the idea of what a photographer wants to do or an artist wants to do, and why they create a specific type of painting, or
Mhm.
why they would perceive something as art or not art, or why a photographer would want to go to war zones and photograph, or why look at Walker Evans and the Great Depression. And
Mhm.
yeah, there was something along the lines of like he's with Walker Evans, the photographs are so visually pleasing to look at that it imprints the horror of how it actually was into your brain.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting aspect. The fact that he was going to do this, he shot it in more of a artistic way as a documentarian. But his whole point was, if I shoot it and make it nice to look at,
People
then
will
you're going
see
to
it.
look at it. But then you're going to see the horror of
Yeah.
what it is and why it is. So it's small. Not that's not a small idea. That's quite a profound idea. But it's that kind of way of thinking rather than just, oh, I'm going to make a nice picture and I'm going to put it on my website, or I'm going to make a nice picture and I'm going to sell it, or I'm going to be hired to take these required kind of pictures. It's like, if there's no idea, then it's not an artistic endeavor if there's no idea behind it. You know?
That is a really good definition or a really
Yeah.
good way of explaining it. I think people kind of get caught up on that a little bit if there's no idea behind it.
Yeah. If there's no idea, then you're just sort of going through the motions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like why would um like Diane Arbus
Mm-hmm.
and the photographs that she made and the world that she showed us
Mm-hmm.
and her own battles and struggles with life.
Yeah.
Uh, the reading about the photographers and understanding them and their motivations is, I think, way more important than looking at a picture and going, "Oh, that's a nice picture. I would like to shoot a picture like that."
Yeah. And that's where
Because you
so
can't shoot a
many
picture like that without understanding why that picture was made. And
totally.
I have photographers, wedding photographers, who are like, "Oh yeah, me and you do the same thing. Yeah, look at. Will you have a look at this and tell me what you think of this?" And I, I don't. Most of the time, I don't have time to be critiquing people's work. But all people want you to do is tell them that you think it's good.
Yeah.
So it's best
Yeah.
in most cases not to say anything. But it's
Yeah.
like, no, I can see how some people think that what they're doing is like what I'm doing, but it's nowhere. It couldn't be any further apart.
What do you think the difference is?
The difference is that there is no that they think that what I do is a style,
Oh,
and my pictures are only the consequence of my study and practice. There's no, and they just look the way that they look because that's how they look. It is what is it? It's the form that follows the function
right.
of the process itself. It's very Bauhaus.
Yeah, totally. Because
And
that's where
but
so many people end, right? Like they just end at looking at it.
yes, yes,
And then they want
yeah.
to know what camera the photographer used.
What the settings were, which I've
Yeah.
always found insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of like, how do I make work like that? Well, you would have to live the life that I've lived to make work the way that I do it, and
Yeah.
understand photography the way that I do it. And it's I can't remember who asked me or what it was. Yeah, that might come back or it might not come back.
We'll grab my other one. They probably went to the same place. The one I
Yeah.
forgot.
I
um,
lost that one. That one went. We seem to be losing to the ether ideas and thought.
there's a ghost in the machine. Um, do you think you mentioned personal projects?
Yeah.
Do you think like isn't all of it personal project?
No, some of it's a lot of it's commercial endeavor.
But if you are shooting for you, like the photos that you want to make,
Mhm.
is that not personal?
Oh, for me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
Like
what I'm
wedding
thinking.
photography for me is no different to bodybuilding culture or working men's clubs or festivals or anything
Mhm.
like that. It's all shot and approached in exactly the same way.
Yeah.
It is, and I think that um, photographers, definitely wedding photographers, should embark on their own personal projects. You know, to turn up at a place that you're supposed to be, to make pictures for people who know that you're going to be there,
Hmm.
who know the end result, doesn't really push you that much. If you have to go and speak to people and explain what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it, and you have to have email conversations for weeks and months before you get into a venue or a club or something like that, and to go there and then respond to it and make a story out of something that isn't already there,
Hmm.
then that will teach you so much more about how to approach a wedding day,
Hmm.
and it will also help you to understand what it is that you want from it. And
Yeah.
again, I get that people have to please the general public for the most part. But when you're not pleasing the general public, go and do some other stuff,
Yeah.
unscripted stuff, things that, and from that, you'll get images that you could never even have preconceived.
Hmm.
And you'll be able to give your clients something else as well as the beautiful picture, the beautiful portrait, the beautiful, like whatever, the detail shots, the editorial shots. But that one funny moment or that one odd, peculiar thing that you would not have got if you weren't just out exploring.
Hmm.
It's a bit of humanity, and add that into the mix. And I had a conversation with a photographer recently, and she Um, she started doing that a couple of years ago and found that the couples were more interested in these B-roll in the B-roll and these outtakes than they were with the fancy group shots and well lit photographs.
Yep.
People have more of a connection to it.
Yep. Yep. I totally
Um,
agree.
yeah, but I mean, if you go and embark on your own personal projects, then like it's going to teach you how to be able to do that.
Hmm.
And if it's photography that you're interested in, be a photographer. Like, go and photograph stuff. Go and like it could be anything from, I don't know, make a little video of the guy who lives next door who plays the piano, or somebody at the end of the street, or go and make a series of pictures in a, I don't know, a tower block that's close by, and get some stories from people and talk to them, or I don't know, whatever you're interested in. If you have an interest, you might have an interest in, I don't know, like whitewater rafting. Go and photograph some of that. Talk to the people, make some pictures, think about how you can build a story around it. And that will really help you to figure out what it is that you want from it.
Hmm.
Because you're not just looking at a series of pictures that you made at a day that was all planned out when you were supposed to be there. You have to figure out kind of what it is that you want and how you want to represent the subject, or the people that you're shooting for. How best to do that, and that will teach you a lot about yourself as well.
Hmm.
Teach you a lot about your own why and your own motivations around why you want to shoot and what it is that you want to show.
Hmm.
Yeah, personal projects, do it.
Do it.
Wow.
Agreed. What personal projects are you working on?
Well, bizarrely, since the end of the pandemic, I have mostly just been trying to keep my head above water. Things are starting to get back to some sort of normal, I think, after 2 years, nearly 3 years now.
Hmm.
And so, but my longer term personal projects are working men's clubs in Northern England.
Hmm. What does that mean
And
for people who aren't from England?
so, all
What
right,
is that?
okay. So, working men's clubs used to be community hubs, and they were kind of owned and ran by the community. They would have like evening classes for kids, or evening activities for kids, weekend activities for kids. It was where people would play dominoes. You might go and
Uh-huh.
see a band. The beer was cheap, and it was a lot of it is built around kind of mining culture as well. So it was where the miners would go. It's like it's this working men's club, but over the years, these places have fallen foul to kind of regeneration and gentrification, and
Hmm.
um, supermarkets selling cheap alcohol. Pubs now that are in close vicinity are selling beer cheaper.
Hmm.
There's more stuff going in the pubs, and the communities themselves are not as tight knit as they used to be. So they are suffering and closing at a rate of knots. And it was a couple of years before the pandemic. There was one local club that I would go into and photograph the bingo, the karaoke, the pool playing, the country and western nights that they would put on, and that kind of thing. And for
Hmm.
me, it was to create a document of that in my time and get something, explore it more, understand it more, and create a document of it before it actually goes away for good, because it will very soon.
Hmm.
That club that I was going to has that's closed down now.
Oh, wow.
But they lost 200 members in 3 years, and that was just people dying, like, and not being
Yeah.
able to get to the club because the demographics just get older and older, and the younger kids aren't coming into their parents' club going shoes. They don't want to play bingo and karaoke. They want to be out and about on the town,
Yeah.
yeah, drinking alcohol pops or something. I don't know. Whatever the kids are doing these days. But there's also like so festivals.
Hmm.
Uh, all of this stuff's based in the north of England as well. And the festival projects, it was going to a festival with a camera is difficult. Um, Getting into the festival, getting anywhere, getting any access.
Hmm.
Um, but if you contact the organizers and let them know that you are creating a long-term project
Hmm.
on local festivals, then you'll get camping passes and you'll get a thingy, a lanyard with a thing like
Yeah.
photographer, and
Yeah.
you can go wherever you want and you can do whatever you want, and you usually get in for free, and
Yeah.
they also there's a few reasons around the festivals uh, project, but that was just another thing. It's just another thing that I'm interested in, like music.
Hmm.
But it's more about the people who go to these festivals than it is about the bands on stage.
Hmm.
Bodybuilding culture, it's always fascinated me
It
with a
is
camera.
fascinating.
Yeah, but with a camera, I can go to local bodybuilding competitions, and I'm picking up on that one again soon with a more national competition to travel the country with a few different bodybuilders to different competitions and different places like around the UK, and build up a bigger story around that. But it's uh, it's interesting that I think a lot of the projects that I embark on, because I'm interested in the subject itself, they are very community driven,
Hmm. Hmm.
you know, and that always comes across.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's just like, you know, it's certainly not intentional, but it always seems to
Hmm.
work out that way, that they are very community driven. And there's always, you always, it's different people as well. It's different social groups, and again, it's about the learning. Like it's uh, at the forefront of everything. Like when you learn and you travel and you talk to people and you talk about different ideas and why people do things. I mean, why these bodybuilders put themselves through what they do, to have this couple of minutes on stage. You know, it's like it would seem, if you just told somebody, it would seem insane. But once you get to know the community, you get to know them, it's kind of like, okay, it's still a bit insane, it's still a bit crazy, but I get it, you know? And
Yeah.
it's like, yeah. And the characters and people, it's like, yeah, it teaches you about yourself. And the more
Yeah.
that we explore and the more that we travel and the more that we discuss different ideas with different kinds of people from different cultures and different backgrounds, then the more of a rounded view, the more human we can be in our approach to wedding photography.
What have you learned about yourself in doing these projects? Like in the bodybuilding one, for instance, what is it that keeps you going back and learning about you and about like what's the overlap?
Well, I mean, it's the dedication that these people have to what it is that they're doing. And we can take little bits of inspiration. And we can also learn. There are people that I've met on my journeys and travels that have also taught me how not to be as a human being.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, and that is as valuable a lesson, or probably more valuable a lesson than getting inspiration from somebody. It's kind of like, okay, well, I that's definitely how we shouldn't act as a human being. So
I'll take
like,
that off the list.
I do that, and I'm probably not going to really talk to you anymore. But it's I don't know. It's just like we're all constantly learning anyway. I think people who are curious and inquisitive are
Yeah.
constantly learning.
Yeah.
And it's also helped me to understand that I really know nothing. Nobody knows anything. We
Hmm.
think we do, but in the grand
Hmm.
scheme of things, and the small amount of the finite time that we have here on Earth, and in comparison to the amount of time that the Earth has been here, it's all our problems are pretty insignificant,
Yeah.
you know, for the most part. For the most part. And it's yeah, which again is a very freeing thing.
Hmm.
To know
Hmm.
that there are no real rules, and as long as we're not hurting anybody, we can do what we want.
Yeah.
Uh, and we self-awareness. That's,
That's the
you know,
theme of this discussion, Ian.
self-awareness.
Love it.
But I think I know myself, but who knows? Do I? Do I even we like was it Socrates? The
Yeah.
only thing that I know for sure is that I know nothing at all.
Yeah. Well, I love that question because it's we're constantly changing. Like if we're curious and we're going out and we're like we're always growing and evolving, do we ever really know
No.
ourselves?
Well, we think we do.
Yeah. I don't
We think
know.
we do. It's not even about us. Like it's more that people think they know how things should and shouldn't be done. That's
Yeah.
the problem. But that's based around, well, that's just people, cantankerous, strange um, kind of people. But no, it's I see it as much as I try to keep away from it. Some of it does filter through, and the chatter that comes from the photography community and wedding photography community, and how angry people get about the most insignificant of thing. It's like wow, like come on, there's more to life than that. Go and have a walk in the woods. Go and hug a tree. Like,
Yeah.
stop it. Take a breath and consider what it is. Because if you're getting angry about that kind of thing, you must be getting angry about a lot of stuff on a daily basis, and that's not healthy. That's
You're right.
it's yeah. You just need to relax a little bit and yeah, be more human.
Yeah, that curiosity I think is critical. When we stop being curious about our other people and
Yeah,
ourselves, that's where
yeah.
you can't connect with others. You can't have like curiosity and empathy go hand in hand. And
No, absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, it does. It teaches you to be more empathetic. And
Yeah.
but the thing, like, as far as wedding photography, I mean, I've been doing this 20 years. How
Mm-hmm.
long can I keep doing it?
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like I could say as long as I'm getting paid, but I don't know. Like, maybe I want to do something else. I say
Mm,
we're under no obligation to be the same person that we were 20 minutes ago, never mind
totally.
20 years ago.
Yeah.
Or what we've kind of, and just because this is something that I do now, I can't say that this is something that I will continue to do. Like, who knows? Things
Mm-hmm.
can change like that.
Yeah.
And we know that with the pandemic, and we know that through illnesses like cancer. We know that, like, in between Christmas and New Year, one of my very closest and dearest friends fell down the stairs and broke his neck.
Oh,
Freak accident.
wow.
Totally freak out,
Wow.
total accident. And
Yeah,
that's how short, and that's how it can just go like this.
absolutely. Yeah,
It can
everything
just,
changes.
and everything changes.
Yeah.
Everything's changed from um, for his family, his daughter,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
you know, his mother, his close knit friends. Like,
Yeah.
and how can we continue to whinge and moan and complain about somebody with a big camera at a wedding getting in front of us when, like,
It's a
you
good
know,
perspective, Ian. It's helpful.
it's just like, come on, man, like, get over it. It's just
Yeah.
like, oh, somebody didn't do this, or somebody never said this, or somebody didn't react the way that you wanted them to react with a
Yeah,
specific thing. It's just like, just get ready. Don't have any expectations, and then you won't be let down. Just like, come and
absolutely.
just live your life and just be.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and I become acutely aware that I have no control over what the past was, and we don't really have that much control over the future. We can do what we think is right now, but the future could bring anything. Like, it could bring another 2 years of sitting in a house going stir crazy. Like, you know, it could bring anything. It's like we don't know. I think we just have to try more and exist in the now,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and just be and do what we feel is right now. And I've started over the last couple of years reducing my um interest in global reach,
What do you mean?
because like I have colleagues, friends, like, spread out all across the world,
Mm-hmm.
and it's difficult to maintain those connections.
Yeah.
And for me, I don't think our brains are geared up to work on a global scale.
Hmm.
It's just become, especially after the pandemic, a harder thing to manage, and harder to kind of keep those connections alive.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and yeah, it's just I just find that, I don't know, it becomes too complicated. I think we have to focus on, like, ourselves and our own communities and our own um like family and our own friends. And
Yeah. Yeah. I see what you're saying, because if we're not working on like ourselves and our family, our community, like what the base of where we are, and we're
yeah,
only like what's happening here is affecting what's happening way over there, right? we
absolutely.
just we're just totally missing out on that ripple effect. And if we're super concerned about something happening on the other side of the world, but we're not like being kind to our
Yeah,
neighbor,
yeah,
what is the, that's
Yeah,
some
yeah.
dissonance. Yeah.
That's kind of, and that has been a shift since the pandemic,
Hmm.
for me. And yeah, and it's all about the living in the now and being present and
Yeah.
being aware of who you are and what you are, and again, understanding that we know nothing and just to continually learn. I don't know, like who knows? It's all
Yeah.
very, it's all getting a bit,
But
well,
nebulous. That word has
yeah,
come into my vocabulary recently, and I really like it.
yeah.
Nebulous. Listen, Ian, I have to run, but this has
Okay,
been really wonderful, and I really appreciate you sharing your perspective with us and a bit of yourself. It's been really cool. I really,
very
really thank
welcome.
you. Yeah.
If anybody wants to see the work, then
Yeah.
it's Instagram and Ian
Um,
Weldon.
yeah, I'm gonna link everything in the show notes
All right,
and
cool.
drive them to you. And yeah, thanks for doing what you do and for encouraging others to do their own thing.
Just do your own thing.
Do your
What
own
is it?
thing.
Be yourself. Everybody else is taken.
Yeah. Yeah, Oscar Wilde.
Oscar Wilde.
Thanks, Ian. Have a
You're
wonderful
very
day.
welcome. No
Okay.
problem. Bye bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.